Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to convert metric units. This means taking a measurement in 1 unit, like centimeters, and taking that same value and turning it into a different unit, like meters. So let me show you a few examples. Before we get started, I want to remind you of what I call the dog phrase. The dog phrase is this. It says, keep his dog moving down center main, or keep his dog going down center main, or keep his dog leaping down center main. These middle letters represent either meters, grams, or liters, depending on which of those is the base unit. And the other letters here represent the other prefixes that we use in the metric system. K for kilo, hecto, deca, deci, centi, and milli. So if you can remember the dog phrase, you should be able to list all the metric units in order. And the only difference from one dog phrase to the next is whether the dog is moving down center main, going down center main, or leaping down center main. So let me show you how we can use this while converting metric units. Here are some example problems from the notes. Now, when you convert metric units, everything is based off of 10 or 100 or 1,000. And every time you multiply or divide by 10, it causes a decimal point to move. So the key is to figure out how many spots to move the decimal point and which way you need to move them. So let me show you how it would work. The first one says take 12.53 kilograms and convert that into hectograms. Now the first step is figuring out my dog phrase. Since we're dealing with kilograms and hectograms, our dog is going to be going. So we will keep his dog going down center main. So the first step is listing out the first letter of each of that dog phrase. Next, we need to choose which letter represents our starting unit. Since we're starting with kilograms, our K represents the unit we start with. And since we're ending with hectograms, the H represents the unit we're ending with. So that means to go from the K to the H, we must move one letter to the right. That means that when we choose do our conversion, we need to move the decimal point one spot to the right. However many letters you move over, it's the same number of times you have to move the decimal point. And whether you're moving to the right or to the left on this dog phrase tells you which way you move the decimal point as well. So here's our 1253. Our decimal point started here, but we need to move it one spot to the right. So from here to there we go 1, and that moves the decimal point right here. So our final answer is 125.3 hectograms. Let's try another example. In this case, we're going from liters to milliliters. So now our dog will be leaping. So we'll say, keep his dog leaping down center main. So we're going from liters, so our start letter would be the one in the middle, over to milliliters. That's represented by the N. Now to go from the L to the M, you notice we have to go 3 letters to the right. 1, 2, 3. You notice I don't count the start letter, right? You're moving 1 to the D, 2 to the C, and 3 to the M. That means we need to move our decimal point 3 spots to the right. So I'm going to write my 2135, and we're going to move the decimal point 3 spots to the right. So here we start. We go 1, 2, 3. Now you notice when I did this, I had to leave a gap. Anytime you have to leave a gap, you need to fill that gap in with a 0. So our correct final answer is 21,350 milliliters. Let's try our third example. We're going milligrams to grams. So since we're dealing with grams, we're going to have the dog going. So we'll keep his dog going down center main. Now we're starting with milligrams, so our start letter will be this M. and then we're ending with grams, which is this G. You notice this time we're counting to the left, which means we need to move the decimal point to the left instead of to the right. You'll also notice in the number 86, there's not a decimal point in there. If there ever isn't a decimal point, as you may remember from math, it belongs at the end, right? So that's where it would be starting off with. So we draw our 86, and then we move the decimal point 1, 2, 3 spots to the left. So it starts here, and we go 1, 2, 3. Once again, you'll notice we leave a gap here, so we need to fill that in. So that's 0.086. Now this is optional, but I like to put another 0 in front of that decimal point just to make sure nobody misses it. Our next one, we're going from meters to centimeters. So since these are meters, we're going to keep his dog moving down center main. Keep his dog moving down center main. So we're starting from M for meters. Keep in mind there are two M's here. The first M would represent the base unit, meters. This last M stands for millimeters. So we're going to start with the M for meters, and we're going to end with the C in centimeters. So that means we're going to have to move our decimal point 1, 2 spots to the right. So when I do that, I just want to show you, we would move the decimal 1, 2, which would leave it right after the 7. Now sometimes I will have students who will literally do this. They will go 1, 2, and then leave the number just like that. Now unless you're James Bond, you're probably not going to write the number 7 with 2 zeros in front of it. So anytime you do that, you're going to scratch them out and just leave that as a 7. I know I'm using pen here. Pencil's more helpful. But I want you to realize that those are unnecessary zeros, so you should just take them out. Finally, we've got this last one, 120 decimeters into kilometers. Remember, the DM stands for decimeter. If it were decameter, it would be DKM, not DM. So since we're dealing with meters again, we're going to keep his dog moving down center main. Now in this case, we have to remember which D this represents. There's two Ds. But since this is deci is the second of those Ds. You notice that these units go from biggest to smallest, like kilo means 1,000, hecto means 100, and deca means 10. After all, 10 years is a decade. So you can use that to help remember which D is which. Since this is deci, it's the one after the base unit, the first one that's a decimal. So we're going to start with the D for deci and go over to kilo. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4 spots to the left. Now once again, there's not a decimal point in the number 120, so if there ever isn't a decimal point, you know that it starts at the very end of the number. So here's our 120, all right? So we move the decimal point 4 spots to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Once again, I had to leave a gap, so I have to fill in that gap with a 0. And while this is optional, I like to put a 0 before the decimal point to make sure people know that it's there. So to sum things up, when you convert metric units, you need to remember the dog phrase. If you can't remember the dog phrase and spell these out, it's going to make it much harder. Then you have to remember to choose your start and ending letter depending on what you have. Remember, the base unit, meters, liters, or grams, is the one in the middle, depending if the dog is moving, going, or leaping. And then finally, remember to move the decimal point, the correct number of spaces, and in the correct direction based on what your starting and ending letters. Now, I made a point of writing each of these out for each problem just to make it clear exactly what I was doing. What some students choose to do on their paper, and what I would encourage you to do after you get some practice, is to just write it on your paper once. Keep his dog moving, going, or leaping down Center Main. Some students will just choose to write this on their paper one time and just use it to count rather than writing out each time. I don't mind if you do that. The only thing that matters to me is that you do whatever it takes to get the correct answer. I'll look at your final answer and it's either right or wrong. So hopefully this helps you understand metric conversions. Take care and have a great day.